So anyway, I honestly think the biggest thing that saved me though was just going in nature.
Yeah.
Like literally living on the beach saved me.
I saw something on Instagram or something recently where there's like this trend going around of like SSRI. What was the video? It was like that look when you're on SSR or
The
that
SSRI
SSRI
stare.
look, and it was just this girl, or no, it was how life be like on SSRIs, and it was just this girl, and it was going viral, and it was just this girl like staring, like literally blank, like death eyes almost, just like blankly staring. And I've never taken SSRIs. I go sort of the another hand in terms of like the not the same, but I mean certainly some stuff that comes with taking something that powerful for 7 years. But it was just interesting to me. I'm like, that seems like a miserable way to live.
Yeah.
To literally just be flatlined almost.
It's interesting, you know, a lot of people have those problems when they're on SSRIs. When I was on SSRIs, it was fine. Like, I actually really enjoyed it. Some people's brain chemistry is just different, right? So some people, if you're inhibiting the reuptake of a certain neurotransmitter, they're going to have like a leveling out feeling, right? It's going to make them feel more balanced. Now, other people, if you already have a lot of excess activity, that's going to make you a little bit more sporadic and manic.
Yeah.
So I had no issues with it when I was on them. The one thing that it did cause issue with is I didn't care at all. So I was incredibly reckless.
Yeah.
I was incredibly reckless and I was incredibly thrill-seeking. Now, the problem that I have with SSRIs in general, aside from the large risk of side effects, is the fact that it makes you feel good enough where you don't address the problems that may be causing your depression. So, are there use cases for SSRIs? Yeah. Do I think there's better antidepressants? Of course. Do I believe in the serotonergic hypothesis of depression? Not really. I think there's way better hypotheses. But it inhibits you from doing the work required to get out of feeling like shit because you feel fine. Now, if you're in a really bad situation that you can't change and you just have to get through it, that's when it might make sense to use some pharmacological intervention. But if depression is caused by a mismatch between you and your environment, or if it's because you're not doing something you know that you need to be doing, SSRIs are the worst thing that you can do. And my life really turned around, and my life was fine before, but my life really turned around, and I started my personal development journey when I got off of SSRIs, because that's when I'm like, oh shit, there's so many things in my life that I need to change.
What was the impetus for you, like, to get off them?
I graduated college, and I had I wanted to reinvent myself because I was in a very demanding position. You know, I was working in cybersecurity, and this was me as like a 22-year-old kid. I've been working on it for like 2 years now, and it's like now I need to really level up. I'm sick of who I was in college. I loved college, and I didn't not like who I was in college, but you get bored.
Yeah.
And I think if you're peaking in college, like that was my biggest fear. So it's like, it's time for me to level up. I'm playing new games. And, you know, one of those things that I wanted to do was just to get off of SSRIs. And so I did it. And the hardest thing, though, was trying to recreate your identity after the last X number of years being on a compound that changes who you are. No different than Vyvanse or Adderall.
Absolutely.
That is the worst part about pharmacological interventions in youth, is that you are forming your sense of self under the influence of a compound. So that was the hardest factor for me. Luckily, it came at a time where I was reinventing myself anyway, but the identity crisis that I had when I got off those, and so many things that I thought were who I was, were actually who I was in an SSRI-induced state. You know, that was really, really difficult. And it took me a year to recalibrate. It took me a year to recalibrate and really get my bearings on who I was. And I really didn't come back into myself until about 2 years after.
It reminds me of what you hear with women on birth control. You know, they'll literally be attracted to like entirely different men when they're on and off birth control. And it's just like, that's the power of you talk about being like a completely different person. Like it literally, I don't even know what system that like affects, but it literally changes who they are.
Yeah.
Because of a pharmacological intervention.
Birth control is a crazy drug.
Yeah.
EE2. So it is binding to those estrogen receptors for way longer and way more importantly than typical estrogen or E2 would. Birth control is a nightmare. Birth control then gets peed out into our water system. And that water gets recycled, and it does not get filtered out. So we're slowly accumulating EE2 in all of our municipal water systems, and we're drinking it. We're showering in it. You ever run through the sprinklers, you drink through a hose. There's probably some EE2 in there. Yeah, it's a nightmare. I mean, the whole entire pharmaceutical industry, you know, it has merit.
Yeah.
But, you know, my life was just absolutely ransacked by pharmaceuticals. Accutane. Accutane, the more I dig into it, the more I'm like, oh my God, this thing destroyed me.
So that's a good question.